Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the import tariff and export subsidy. So these two names are explaining that these are basically the trade protection policies. So that means here we are going to discuss about two trade protection policies. First of all, let me explain what is import tariff. First of all, what is tariff? Tariff means tax. Now, import tariff means import tax. That means if a consumer wants to purchase some commodity from the international market, he has to pay tax to its government. This is called import tariff. Now, the question is why that tariff is imposed. First of all, the tariff is imposed to reduce import. Second, tariff is imposed to protect the import competing sector of the domestic economy. And finally, tariff is the source of the government revenue. So basically, these are the three things for which the import tariff is imposed. Now, there are different type of import tariff. First of all, the tariff may be ad valorem tariff. Ad valorem tariff means when the tax is imposed on the price of the commodity. Say, price of one importable commodity is 100 rupees and the ad valorem tariff rate is 10%. In that case, if the consumer is purchasing one commodity from the international market, then that consumer has to pay 10 rupees to his government as the import tariff. Now come to the second type of import tariff, that is called specific tariff. In case of specific tariff, the tariff or the tax is imposed on the quantity sold. Again, if the price of one commodity is 100 rupees in the international market and one domestic consumer is purchasing the commodity from the international market, then that consumer has to pay and the specific tariff rate is 10%. In that case, the consumer has to pay 10 rupees to its government as he is purchasing one unit of that commodity. There is third type of import tariff, that is called compound. Compound is actually the mixture of the ad valorem and the specific tariff. Say the same commodity, that is price of one commodity is 100 rupees in the international market and the ad valorem tariff rate is 5% and the specific tariff is 10. In that case, when the consumer is purchasing the commodity from the international market, he has to pay 5 rupees as the price of commodity is 100, so he has to pay 5% of that 100 rupees, that is 5 rupees to its government as ad valorem tax and 10 rupees to his government as the specific tax because he is purchasing one unit of the commodity. So, all total 15 rupees of tax the consumer is paying to his government. So, basically these are the three types of import tariff which we can see in the real life. Now, we are watching the partial equilibrium effect of tariff for a small country. In that case, we are watching the demand and the supply curves are of their normal shapes. That means the demand curve is downward sloping, maintaining the law of demand, and the supply curve is upward rising, showing the law of supply. So, the international price for this commodity is P2, which is quite low than the equilibrium price in the domestic market. As the international price is lower than the market clearing price of the domestic economy, so the consumers are interested to pay at the lower price, that means from the international market. So the consumers is purchasing the commodity at the price P2. So when they are consuming at the price P2, you can see in the domestic market there is a significant amount of excess demand of the amount AB because here at the price P2, the consumers are demanding P2B and the producer is producing, the domestic producers, they are producing P2A. So, the amount of AB is the amount of excess demand in the domestic market. So, that demand can be fulfilled by importing that commodity from the international market. Now, as that import is quite high for the domestic government, so the government is imposing a tariff. That is the import tariff. Say the tariff rate is P1, P2. In that case, in the domestic market, the price is increased to P1. And now, the consumer is reducing its demand because the price is higher. So now the demand is increased, and at the same time the domestic suppliers are increasing their supply because the price is increased to them as well. So as a result of these two things, the import is falling, that is the amount of excess demand is falling, and now that is MN. As MN is lesser than AB, so the government is successful of its objective, that is of reduction of import. So import is reduced, and as the tax is imposed, so by the amount of P1, P2 per unit of the quantity sold, so tax revenue is also there. So this is the partial equilibrium effect of tariff. Now we are going to discuss about the rate of effective protection. To discuss the rate of effective protection, we need the concept of domestic value added. Now, what is domestic value added? Domestic value added is the difference between the price of the final product and the price of the raw material which is actually imported. So, the imported price of the raw material. Now, this domestic value added is one of the components to calculate the rate of effective protection. Now, rate of effective protection is very important from the domestic producer's point of view. On the other hand, the nominal tariff is very important from the domestic consumer's point of view. Now the question is, why rate of protection is very important for the domestic producer's point of view? Because domestic producers, they are getting some benefit as they are getting the raw material at the lower price from the international market, and when they are selling their final commodity, they can sell it at a higher price because the tariff is imposed on the final product. So the effective protection, the ultimate protection which they are getting is quite higher as compared to the nominal tariff. Here one assumption is very important regarding the rate of effective protection, that after imposition of this tariff, the international price of the final product and the raw material is same as before in the international market. That should be there. Otherwise, the rate of effective protection should not be as it is expected. Here one thing is very important, that it is seen in the real life that many of the developed countries, they are using the cascading sort of tariff. In that case, what they are doing? They are imposing almost zero tariff on the raw material. Then quite a little bit higher tariff on the semi-finished product and a significantly higher tariff on the final product. And this is how the domestic import competing sectors are getting a significant protection from his own government. So that is why from the production point of view, rate of effective protection is very important, but the consumers are not at all interested about the rate of effective protection. They are only concerned about the nominal import tariff rate. Now we are going to discuss about the general equilibrium of a small country after tariff imposition. Here the problem of a small country is that the small country cannot influence the international price of the commodity. So that is why when the tariff is imposed in the domestic market, the price of the commodity is increased to the full extent of the tariff rate. Here the international price is not falling. In that case, the effective rate of protection is quite similar to the tax imposition. Now then, what about the domestic consumer? Domestic consumers are facing the problem because in the international market, the price is quite higher as compared to the domestic market. So they have to give higher price than before. So there is a loss of welfare from the consumer's point of view. That welfare loss can be covered if the government is using its tax revenue for the welfare of the economy as a whole. Even then, the total welfare loss cannot be covered. Our diagram will explain the situation. Here we can see the country is producing two commodities X and Y is actually the imported commodity. Before imposition of the tariff, the price ratio is represented by the price line 3. And given this price line 3, the consumer's welfare is shown with the help of the social indifference curve at the point E2. At the point E2, the social indifference curve is tangent with the price line 3. So that was the initial position of the consumer. Now, after the tariff is imposed, the relative price of the importable in the domestic market is increased. As a result of that, the price line is now 1 instead of 3. So that line 1 is steeper than 3. Now, given this line 1, and if we assume that government is using its tax revenue for the welfare of the economy, then this line 1 will be shifted parallelly to line 2. Now, on that line 2, the new social welfare curve will be tangent at the point E1. So, if you compare E1 with E2, then we can understand that even government is spending its tax revenue for the welfare of the economy, then the social welfare cannot be increased to that level as it was earlier. So that is how we can explain the tariff imposition or any such type of intervention by the government is not at all good for the economy as a whole. Now we are going to discuss about the general equilibrium effect of the tariff in case of a large country. Now in case of a large country, as it is a large one, so when tariff is imposed by this large country, its demand will fall. And the fall in demand by the large country is making one significant effect on the international market. So as the demand is falling by the large country, the demand will also fall for the international market as well. Now in the market, if demand is falling, then the equilibrium price will fall. And this is why the international price of that particular commodity will fall. And as the tariff is imposed by the large country, so ultimate effect in this large country after tariff imposition was quite lesser than expected, because the base price, that is the international price, has reduced because of the size of this economy. So that is the difference between the small country and the large country. Now, when the tariff is imposed by such a large country, then what is its effect? There are two effects. One is positive effect, another is negative effect. What is the positive effect? As tariff is imposed by the large country and its demand is falling, and this fall in demand is making some impact in the international market, so that the international price is falling, so the terms of trade is rising. Now the question is, what is terms of trade? Terms of trade is the price of the exportable divided by price of importable. Because of the policy of the large country, as price of importable is falling in the international market, so the ratio, that is price of exportable by price of importable, is rising for the large country. Now increase in terms of trade is a good indicator of the economy, and that is why it is called the positive effect of the tax imposition by the large country. So this is the positive effect. Now where is the negative effect? When the tariff is imposed, then the amount of import is falling. And not only that, the export will also fall. So we can say the volume of trade is falling because of the tariff imposition. So as the volume of trade is falling, this is not a good indicator for the developing economy. And that is why this is called the negative effect. So we can say that for any country, for any large country, when the tax is imposed, the positive effect as well as the negative effect is there. What about the small country? In case of small country, as it is very small with respect to the world economy, it doesn't make any effect in the international price. So terms of trade will be same as before. So there will be no positive effect through terms of trade reduction when tariff is imposed by such a small country. So positive effect is zero in case of a small country. But the negative effect is there because tariff is imposed, so volume of trade will fall. So the small country is getting only the negative effect of tariff imposition, whereas the large country is getting both positive and negative effects of tariff imposition. Now here we are watching the effect of a tariff imposition by the small country. Now that is explained here with the help of the offer curve. Say the foreign country is a small country and the rest of the world is a large country. So for the foreign country, the offer curve is initial offer curve was represented by this red line 1. Now when the tariff is imposed, its volume of trade will fall and the line has shifted to 2. Now the international terms of trade is same as before for the small country. So as the volume of trade is falling, so the line, the offer curve is going towards the origin. So we can understand for the small country, the tariff is not at all any good. Now we are going to discuss about the optimum tariff. So for the large country, as there are two effects, that is the positive effect by increasing terms of trade and the negative effect by decreasing the volume of trade. So ultimately there should be one tariff which will maximize the positive effect or minimize the negative effect. So that tariff rate is called the optimum tariff. Now for the small country, the optimum tariff should be 0. Because there is no positive effect by the tariff imposition for a small country. But for a large country, there are actually two effects. One is positive, another is negative. So optimum tariff is showing the amount of tariff which will maximize the positive effect or minimize the negative effect. So what is the formula of optimum tariff? The formula of optimum tariff is G is equal to 1 by E minus 1. Where E is the elasticity, import elasticity of the foreign country. So this is in short the formula of the optimum tariff calculation. Now we are going to discuss about the tariff and retaliation. What it is? Say one country has imposed tariff. So because of that tariff imposition, the volume of trade is falling. So volume of trade of that particular country is falling is true, but at the same time volume of trade of its trade partner is also falling. So this is not at all good for the partner country, or here we can call it as a foreign country. At the same time, when the terms of trade is rising because of the tariff imposition, the terms of trade is falling for the foreign country. So from the both sides, the foreign country is the sufferer when the domestic country is imposing tariff. To protect the own country, the foreign country will also may impose tariff. So in that case, again the volume of trade will fall and that will continue. And ultimately, both countries will end up with 0 volume of trade. That means they will go to their autarky position. So this is how, this is called the retaliation. So next diagram is explaining the retaliation. Here both countries are large enough, so initially their offer curves are represented by the line 1 and 2 and the terms of trade is TOT1. So say the country, the home country, or rather here the foreign country has imposed tariff first, so the offer curve of the foreign country has shifted from 1 to 3. As the foreign country's offer curve has shifted from 1 to 3, so the terms of international terms of trade is falling from TOT1 to TOT2. After watching the tariff imposition by the foreign country, the home country will impose the tariff, and as a result of that, the offer curve of the home country has shifted from 2 to 4 and the terms of trade has shifted from TOT2 to TOT3, and that process will continue, and we can see the volume of trade is falling continuously for each and every step of this both country, and ultimately the volume of trade will end up with 0, that is autarky volume of trade. So that is the problem of retaliation. Now we are going to discuss about the quota. Now quota is the quantitative restriction, as I already said. Now sometimes the government is thinking that tariff is not the correct policy to restrict the import. So they are using the quota system, that is the quantitative restriction. So the no tariff revenue is there behind the quota. Initially the price in the international market was P2, which is quite lower than the domestic market clearing price. So at the price P2, the international import for the domestic import was AB. Now the government is thinking that AB is quite high, and that is why government has reduced or restrict the amount of import to CD. Now once that quantitative restriction is imposed on the amount of import, then automatically in the domestic market the price is increased, and the price is increased from P2 to P1, so that the import will be Mn, which is equal to CD. So the domestic consumer as well as domestic producers are facing the price P1, which is quite higher than before, and P2 minus P1 is there because of the quota. So this is the effect of quota. Now we are going to discuss about quota rent. What is quota rent? Apparently there is no such revenue from the government's point of view through quota system. But sometimes government is selling the quota license in the open market. Now when that licenses are sold, that is the one source of government revenue. What about the owner of the license holders? They may generate their monopoly power in the import sector, and that is why they are spending a lot to get the control over this limited license. And when they are spending a lot, maybe sometimes that amount is quite higher as compared to their production cost. So this is called the quota rent. Now we are going to compare the tariff and quota. Apparently there is no such difference between the tariff and quota, but tariff is one of the sources of the government revenue, whereas quota is not the sources of government revenue. When quota license are sold in the market, then only quota is becoming the source of government revenue. At the same time, it is clear that it may be tariff or it may be the quota, but the domestic consumers are facing the higher price than before. Domestic producers are getting higher price than before. So this is how the equilibrium or the free market situation is disturbed through these instruments. It may be tariff, it may be quota. Now here we must explain another difference between tariff and quota. Say there is a tariff or there is a quota, but due to some reason there is an increase in demand of that commodity. Now if there is tariff, then the tax rate is fixed by the government, and as the demand is rising, the consumers are consuming more from the international market than before, so the import will increase in case of increase in demand. So what the government is facing? Government is getting the more tax revenue than before. That will be the effect of increase in demand when the tariff is imposed. But what about quota? Say quota is there and demand has increased. As quantity is fixed there, even there is an increase in demand, there should not be any increase in import. So in that case, to clear the domestic market, the price in the domestic market will increase again. And this is how the domestic producers are getting more benefit from the quota than from the revenue. And this is why the domestic producers or the domestic import competing sector, to be specific, they always prefer quota than tariff. Because tariff, with increase in demand, tariff may be a source of more government revenue, but quota is helping the import competing sector of the domestic economy to earn more profit, because they can sell the same commodity, same quality of the commodity at the higher price. And why there is higher price? Because the price mechanism is working to clear the domestic market.